I love book clubs. Love getting together with guys on early mornings. I love going to the coffee house, the steam coming off the coffee. I love a good discussion about good books with people who really care. If you've come to this video because you're looking for a book club or ideas for a book club, or maybe just because you love books and want to see what people are reading, I'm glad you're here today. Coffee houses are great places for book discussions. As long as you have a great dark roast coffee to go along with it. Men's book clubs are ideal for those places because they have their place in history. Great revolutions started in coffee houses. Great ideas are discussed at men's book clubs. And men are more and more interested about history. There's a growing historical consciousness. The only thing is that for men's book clubs, books often need to either be very short or very compelling. Today, I'd like to talk about my list of the top 3 books in history that I would recommend for men's book clubs. Doesn't mean I'm right. This is what I've found works for me. I'm Liam, and I'm a retired history professor. And the books that I'm going to suggest today are chosen because they've generated the most positive discussions I've ever been involved in. If you know some good history books and you've had great discussions about them, please remember to share your recommendations in the comments. What I've found out about men over the last 20 years or so is that there is this growing historical consciousness, and there are 3 main trend areas, especially older men in book clubs are interested in. The first one is the American Revolution, either the founders themselves and stories about them or stories about the Revolutionary War. A second trend area is the Civil War. That seems to be the hottest. The third one this year is the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. I'm noticing a little uptick in interest in books about World War II. And I think I may have a video in the future where I just share some ideas about books about World War II that are good for discussion. In my next video, I'll talk about 3 great short books for discussion in men's book clubs. So you'll want to listen to that one too. Let's get started. Here's my number 3 recommendation for a great history book for a men's book club. The book is Killer Angels by Michael Shaara. It was written in the 1970s, and it's actually the second book in a trilogy of historical novels about the Civil War that Shaara wrote. This one won the Pulitzer Prize. It was adapted into a film in 1993. And the book focuses on the Battle of Gettysburg during the Civil War. It centers on 4 main people, and it is a novel. The 2 that you may recognize are Robert E. Lee for the Confederacy and Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, who was a commander in the Union Army at Gettysburg. Explore Lee's risky decisions in attempting to stick a dagger into the Union Army, from which they would never recover, since this was the invasion of the North. And then discuss the remarkable leadership of this colonel from Maine, a college professor, not a trained military person at all, Joshua Chamberlain. And my guess would be that Joshua Chamberlain will become the hero in your book club's meetings if you have to define a hero in the book. Now, you could recommend one of Shaara's other books, For the Love of the Game, for a future book club on great baseball books. I love baseball too. The second book, number 2 on my list of the top 3 history books for men's book clubs, is a book by David McCullough entitled John Adams. It's also a Pulitzer Prize winner, and it's a biography where he brings John Adams out of obscurity as one of the founding fathers and gives him his rightful place in the history of our nation. It's also a masterful presentation of Adams' wife, Abigail Adams. Her tremendous intellect and insight, her correspondence with her husband, John, shows us what a brilliant woman she was. She would have made a great president of the United States. So this brings up a discussion point that might be important in any men's book club that discusses John Adams, and that is, does John Adams deserve to be listed in the trifecta of great revolutionary intellectuals, along with Jefferson and Franklin? There might be a number in your book club who would be convinced that Adams is much more important than we previously gave him credit for. However, McCullough's book is not a hagiography. It's not just praise of John Adams. He is very aware of Adams' flaws and his prickly personality that made many people not like him during his lifetime. You get the impression that Adams would rather be right than be revered, and he got his wish. I'd also mention McCullough's other great works, like 1776 as a great book club option. In fact, McCullough is such a great writer and prolific enough that you could probably have men's book club selections for an entire year just based on David McCullough's great history books. There's an idea. What about a David McCullough men's history book club? That's an idea for the future. The number one history book that I would recommend for men's book discussions is 5 Days in London, May 1940, by John Lukács. Lukács's book focuses on Winston Churchill during a critical period of World War II. In fact, just over 5 days, just as the title says, from May 24th to May 28th, 1940. Lukács is a renowned Churchill scholar. He's a Hungarian-American historian who taught at Chestnut Hill College for years in Philadelphia, but distinguished himself throughout the latter part of the 20th century as the foremost scholar writing about Winston Churchill, and particularly Winston Churchill's relationship with Adolf Hitler, his adversary. The book focuses on Britain's darkest days. 2 weeks after Churchill became prime minister, 350,000 troops were trapped at Dunkirk. It was during these 5 days that Churchill and his war cabinet had to determine how they were going to carry out the rest of the war. Would they try to make peace with Germany to save the 350,000? Would they try to evacuate all of those men because that was the core of the British Army? Or would they be forced to allow them to be taken as prisoners of war? So Churchill's leadership was really in question. The question was, would he be the right leader that the people hoped he would be? Or would he be the loose cannon that most of the world's leaders, in fact, British leaders, thought he actually was? The book reads like literature, but it's a valuable historical work. Lukács believed history should be written as compellingly as novels. So there you are, my top 3 history books for men's book clubs: Killer Angels, John Adams, and 5 Days in London. Good discussions come from compelling characters in both fiction and history. And these books are compelling reads, but they aren't short. So in my next video, I'll talk about shorter books that are good and compelling, that men will come in the midst of busy schedules, devote time to have an intelligent discussion. I am passionate about history and about books and reading, and I look forward to offering you good content in those areas. So thank you again, and God bless. Please remember to subscribe, like, and comment